Hi, good evening. I'm Kiran Khan, and today we have the most honorable member of Parliament, Andrew Gwynne, with us. And let me introduce firstly Andrew John Gwynne. Andrew Gwynne is the Labour Member Parliament for the Denton and Reddish, and has been an MP of, continually since 5th of May 2005. He currently undertakes the role of Shadow Minister, Social Care. Thank you
Good
so much for
evening.
joining.
No, thank you for
Good
having
evening.
me.
So my
Yeah,
question is that what are the potential human rights concern regarding the agreement between the UK and Rwanda to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda from Britain to Rwanda?
so what we see here is a Tory government in its death throes. They have failed miserably in governing the United Kingdom, and for many of their supporters, illegal migration is the number one issue. But what we've also seen at the same time is this government remove its commitment to international development. It has woefully underfunded border security, and the cuts that we've had for 14 years are showing exactly what happens. So we have lots of people now coming, the Tories would say illegally, to the United Kingdom across the Channel in boats. This is an incredibly dangerous thing for people to do. Now, I want to separate migration, which is people moving for economic reasons, people moving for studying, people moving for family reasons, and asylum seekers, refugees, people fleeing for their lives. The United Kingdom has always been welcoming for people who are refugees, people for whom living in their home country temporarily is not an option. And throughout our history, we have always been welcoming of refugees. What really concerns me is the Conservatives have muddled the two things together. And what we now face is potentially refugees, people who are fleeing persecution, being sent to Rwanda. And because an act of the British Parliament says that Rwanda is safe forevermore, and just because the British Parliament says it doesn't make it true, we could potentially be sending people to Rwanda who have fled Rwanda for a variety of reasons. And so I just think this is the wrong tactic. It's not going to work. It's incredibly expensive. It's costing us as British taxpayers £2 million per person to deport them to Rwanda as part of the deal the government have done with the government of Rwanda. And I actually think we need to tackle this at source. We break up the gangs, we work with our European counterparts to try and stop people coming to Europe illegally, let alone to the United Kingdom. Because you know what? If you cross the Mediterranean, which is a huge sea to cross, the English Channel at its narrowest point is nothing. So, of course, people are going to make that journey having come across the Mediterranean. But we also need to reinvest in international development to tackle some of the underlying causes why people come to Europe illegally to seek a better life. And that means tackling wars. It means developing industries in some of those countries and making sure there's food security. Because often it's things like famine, war, and the lack of job opportunities as to why people come to Europe for a better life. And if we can solve those problems at source, we actually remove the risk of people coming across the sea, whether it's the Mediterranean or the Mediterranean and the English Channel, which is incredibly dangerous.
What will happen? What do you think? What will happen to those migrants affected by Rwanda scheme?
Well, I'm not sure that many will actually ever make it to Rwanda. I think this is basically a gimmick. It's a headline to show that the government's doing something. But the reality is that unless we tackle the issues I've talked about, trying to prevent wars escalating into regional conflicts, trying to prevent famine and building food security in some of the poorest parts of the world, and making sure that we develop jobs in the poorest parts of the world as well, to give people a reason to live in those areas, in their home countries, rather than come to the United Kingdom in the hope that there's a better life for them here, because often there isn't. And, you know, what we really need to do is to tackle the huge regional inequalities in this world between the rich north and the poor south. Only by making the south, the southern hemisphere, more prosperous, more stable, will we prevent this global migration.
What can UK do to help bring about ceasefire in Gaza? What do you think? How UK can help?
Look, my heart bleeds with sorrow at the images that are coming out of Gaza. The one thing I always say, that tragically those innocent civilians, those kids at the peace camp, those mums and children and dads that were going about their ordinary lives in southern Israel on the 7th of October, and the mums, the dads and children of Gaza have in common is that they are innocent civilians caught up in the most horrific conflict that has gone on for 7 long decades in the Middle East. And I just hope and pray that one day very soon we will get peace in the region. And I don't think that peace in the region will come about until there is justice for the Palestinian people. And that means, I think, the rest of the world has to do all it can after the horrors of the last 6 months to bring about a political solution to this that results in a Palestinian state, independent, secure, and proud, supported by other countries, not just in the region, but across the world, so that there is a prosperous future for Palestinians and Israeli alike, working together for a prosperous future in the Holy Lands. But that's not going to come about while we've got Hamas on one side peddling extremism and the Netanyahu government on the other side peddling extremism. And the reality is that they are both sides of the same coin. Both need each other. Netanyahu needs Hamas to be extreme to justify his own extremism. And Hamas needs Netanyahu to be extreme to justify their extremism. And the tragedy is that moderate voices in Palestine and in Israel get drowned out. And that means that we can't get that peaceful solution. So I think the role of the United Kingdom is firstly to make sure that the United Nations resolution for a ceasefire that has been passed is adhered to. And that means that Hamas has to release the hostages that they still have, and that Israel has to stop the bombardment. And any thought of an attack on Rafah needs to be very quickly scrubbed, because I don't think the Western world will accept that, and nor should they, because there has been too much killing, too much death, it has gone too far, and actually this ceasefire should have happened months ago, and it hasn't. Secondly, we need to make sure that there is justice done by international law. And that means that the International Criminal Court has to do their investigation, and where they find there have been war crimes, those perpetrators of war crimes need to be held to justice. because international law and the rules-based system matters. It was created after the Second World War because of the horrors that we saw there. And yet for too many decades, not just in the Middle East, but across the world, we see human rights abuses. If international law is to stand for anything, the perpetrators of those war crimes and of those human rights abuses need to be brought before the courts and held accountable for their actions. But then more pressingly, the United Kingdom, the United Nations, and the whole world need to get aid into Gaza immediately. We need to feed those who are famished. We need to get the water supplies healthy and up and running. We need to get electricity, gas and petrol in. We need to get medicines in, and we need to start the process of rebuilding civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, roads and homes for people to live in Gaza. Otherwise, there will be an ongoing humanitarian catastrophe. And that's a lot of work we've got to do. But I think Britain needs to take the lead on this. And the United Kingdom Parliament has voted for a ceasefire. It did so a few months ago, a Labour Party motion. It was backed by the entire United Kingdom Parliament, and yet our government has done nothing. So I call on Rishi Sunak and on the rest of the government, listen to Parliament, listen to the United Nations, get that ceasefire and get the aid into Gaza and get it in quickly.
On 2nd of May, local elections are going to be held, and obviously all the parties are doing their campaigns. So what do you think? What is the role of Labour Party if they will win, and how it will be beneficial for the public of and for the people of UK? Great
So these are
Britain.
the last set of the local elections before we have the general election. So it will be a big test of the mood of the country ahead of the next general election, when we will decide on a new government. And I think this is really important that people go out and vote Labour to show the Conservatives that they are on the ropes, that they are at the end of their tenure in government, and that this country is ready for change. Now, the Labour Party has, in lots of parts of the country, been really defending public services against 14 years of Conservative cuts to local government budgets. That means that we have saved Sure Start centres, we've kept community centres open, we've invested in elderly people, in young people, and making sure that our communities are held together. And it's been really tough because councils up and down the country have lost millions and millions of pounds of funding that they desperately need. But Labour councils have been on your side for the last 14 years. And I would urge the viewers to stick with Labour now, so that we can get that Labour government to change Britain for the better, so that we have a better, fairer, more equal society, where we tackle injustice, where we save the NHS, where we invest in our young people, in education, in training and job opportunities, and where we build homes for the next generation. It's a big task ahead of us, but a vote for Labour on the 2nd of May is the springboard to the Labour government this country so desperately needs.
With including all other issues, Islamophobia is also one of the major issue in the UK. Is tackling Islamophobia, especially after Gaza war, a priority in local elections?
I think it has to be. Look, local government is about communities. It's about bringing communities together. And whether we live in a very white area or whether we live in a more diverse area, different parts of the United Kingdom are very different in their makeup. We are one country. We are all British citizens, and I want us to live together in harmony. One of the things about my new constituency, because at the next general election, I take in a very diverse part of Manchester within my constituency, and I've been getting to know a number of different communities in my new patch, and that diversity is a real strength. So whether it's the Sikh community, the Hindu community, the Jewish community, the Buddhist community, or the Muslim community, they each enrich our society. They add a bit more to it. And look, there's nothing more that upsets me than racism. Because for me, there is only one race, the human race. We were all made in God's image. And we should be there to look out for one another. Rather than focusing on differences, we should be focusing on what brings us together, what unites us, that common humanity, those values of wanting to look after each other, to have a better life for our children and grandchildren, to leave a safer, healthier planet for future generations. These are universal values. And when I see one group of people attack another group of people, especially because of something that is happening thousands of miles away that is beyond all of our control, it saddens me, it angers me. And I think we need to do a lot more to cherish the uniqueness of the diversity of the United Kingdom, because I think we've got something special in this country, because it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, what your religion is. If you make this country your home, you're welcome. You're able to thrive, you are able to succeed, and society is there to help you. And I think that's a wonderful strength of the UK. And wherever there is racism, and at this moment in time, there is far too much Islamophobia and there is far too much anti-Semitism, we need to call it out, because we are all human beings. We breathe the same air, we stand on the same planet, we bleed the same colour blood. And let's stand together in unity. And I will do all I can to defend the Muslim community in Manchester and in the United Kingdom, and other ethnic groups too, against hatred, bigotry and racism.
Kashmir issue is one of the serious conflict between Pakistan and India. What is your stance on this issue?
So I've been very privileged for a number of years to be involved with the Kashmir issue, and I'm currently the chair of Labour Friends of Kashmir. And I came to the Kashmir issue with only a very tiny Kashmiri population in my current constituency. And they came to see me about human rights abuses affecting their own families back in Kashmir. And were very surprised that I understood about the history of the Kashmir issue. Just by chance, I'd done my university dissertation on the end of the British Empire in India. And of course, you can't learn about the end of the Raj without understanding the Kashmir issue and how we got to where we are today. And the more I've got involved with the Kashmir issue, the greater I see the injustice. Look, to me, it's very much like the Palestine issue. There is a country that is incredibly powerful, and there are a people that have been denied their rights to self-determination. The conflict has gone on about the same time as the Palestine issue as well. And for me, its roots are the same. The right to self-determination. I believe that all human rights flow from the most fundamental of all human rights. So whether it's the right to education, the right to religious freedom, the right to belong to a political party, the right to belong to a trade union, the right to education, the right to family, all of those rights flow from the right to choose by whom you are governed and how you are governed, that right to self-determination. And when you are denied that right to self-determination, you are basically denied all other human rights. And that is the tragedy that we see in Indian administered Jammu and Kashmir, where the human rights of the indigenous population have been stripped away, where political opponents are imprisoned, and in the case of Yasin Malik, is on death row, and very little is being done by the international community, despite there being United Nations resolutions and despite there being lots of evidence of human rights abuses. So I've used my voice in Parliament to tell the story of the Kashmiri people, and to tell it again and to tell it again, because I don't want this conflict to be forgotten. And look, it's not for me as a British Member of Parliament to decide how Kashmir should be governed or by whom Kashmir should be governed. I, on one level, have no interest in whether Kashmir is governed by Pakistan, whether Kashmir is governed by India, or whether Kashmir is governed by the Kashmiri people as an independent state in their own right. The only people who can decide that are the Kashmiri people. And that's why I am proud that we have got Labour Party policy to agree that the next Labour government, should there be one, will work to bring about a peaceful solution, will work to ensure that United Nations resolutions are upheld, and will work to ensure that human rights abuses and the perpetrators are held to account, and that there can be no decision about Kashmir without the Kashmiri people at the table. And I think if we can get over that line, the rest will be down to the people of Kashmir. But I'm not naive enough to think we can wave a magic wand and make it happen. We have to use diplomacy, we have to use our international power, both at the United Nations Security Council and as partners in the Commonwealth with both Pakistan and India, to be an honest broker, to get the voice of Kashmir heard and to get that plebiscite that has been denied the Kashmiri people for too long. Because ultimately, this is about human rights. And like with Palestine, I believe in fundamental human rights, and we need to make sure that international law works for the people whose human rights have been stolen from them.
In the end, I would like to you to give a message for overseas Pakistanis or British Pakistanis and the viewers who are watching us in this interview.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope that we've had a good discussion about a number of issues. But look, in me, you will always have a voice of honesty, of dignity, and ensuring that the voice of the Muslim community here in Britain is heard, is respected, and is understood. And in Parliament, I will always be an advocate for social justice, for humanity, and for the universal human rights that we all have as our birthright. So whether you're in Pakistan or whether you're here in the United Kingdom, I hope you can live in peace and prosperity as part of the global human race.
Thank you so much. So nice of you, and thank you for your time.
No, thank you for having me.